Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and as always, I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Julia.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to have you with us today. We hope you're having an amazing day and are ready to improve your English with us.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to say something in English, but suddenly your mind became completely blank? You knew the word yesterday. You studied it many times, but at the exact moment you needed it, the word simply disappeared.
Oh, yes, Jason. I think almost every English learner has experienced that feeling. You start speaking confidently, and then suddenly you think, wait, what was that word again? It can be frustrating and even a little embarrassing.
Exactly. Maybe you've said to yourself, I understand English when I read or listen, but when I want to speak, I forget all the words. If that sounds like you, then today's episode is perfect for you.
The good news is that you're not bad at English, and you're definitely not alone. Forgetting words while speaking is one of the most common problems that English learners face all around the world.
That's right. And today, we're going to talk about why this happens, why your brain forgets words during conversations, and most importantly, what you can do to remember vocabulary more easily and speak English with greater confidence.
So, if you're tired of forgetting words and want to become a more confident English speaker, stay with us because this episode could completely change the way you learn and speak English.
Grab your notebook, relax, and let's begin today's topic. I want to speak English, but I always forget the words. So, Julia, let's start with a question that many listeners probably have in their minds right now. Why do we forget English words so easily? Sometimes we study a word 10 times. We write it down in our notebook, and we even understand its meaning. But when it's time to speak, the word just disappears. Why does this happen?
That's a great question, Jason, and the first thing our listeners need to know is this. Forgetting words is completely normal. It doesn't mean that you're bad at English or that you have a poor memory. In fact, even native speakers sometimes forget words in their own language.
That's true. I think many learners believe that good English speakers never forget vocabulary. But the reality is that our brains remember information better when we use it regularly. If we only study words and never use them in conversations, our brains may decide that those words are not important and slowly forget them.
Exactly. Another reason is that many learners try to memorize hundreds of words at one time. They learn long vocabulary lists, but they never practice using those words in real sentences. Learning a word and using a word are two completely different things.
And then there's another big problem: nervousness. The moment you start speaking English with someone, you may become anxious or afraid of making mistakes. When you're nervous, your brain doesn't work as smoothly, and suddenly you can't remember even simple words that you already know.
That's so true. And many learners also spend too much time translating from their native language into English. They think of a sentence in their own language first, and then try to find every English word one by one. This process takes time and often causes them to forget the words they want to say.
So, if you often forget English words while speaking, please don't be discouraged. You're not the only one, and there's nothing wrong with you. It simply means that your brain needs more practice, more repetition, and more opportunities to use English in real situations.
Exactly. The good news is that this problem can be fixed, and in today's episode, we're going to show you some simple ways to remember words better and speak English more confidently.
Now, let's talk about the first big mistake that causes many English learners to forget words. Trying to learn too many words at one time. Julia, I think almost every learner has done this at least once.
Oh, absolutely. Many students open a vocabulary book and say, "Today I'm going to memorize 50 or even 100 new words." At first, it feels productive because they're learning a lot of vocabulary, but a few days later, they realize that they've forgotten most of those words.
Exactly. The human brain doesn't work like a computer where you can simply download hundreds of words and remember them forever. Our brains need time to understand, organize, and practice new information.
That's right. Imagine that you plant 100 seeds in a garden today, but you never water them. Will they grow? Probably not. Vocabulary works the same way. Learning a word once is like planting a seed, but using the word again and again is like giving it water and sunlight.
I love that example. Instead of trying to learn 50 new words every day, it's much better to learn 5 useful words and practice them in different sentences. When you use a word many times, your brain starts to think, this word is important. I need to remember it.
Exactly. For example, if you learn the word confident, don't just memorize its meaning. Make sentences like, "I want to be a confident English speaker," or "She feels confident during presentations." The more you use the word, the easier it becomes to remember.
So, dear listeners, don't try to fill your mind with too many new words at once. Learn fewer words, but use them more often. Remember, in language learning, it's not about how many words you study, it's about how many words you can actually use when you speak.
That's such an important lesson. Small steps and regular practice will help you remember vocabulary much better than trying to memorize huge lists of words in one day.
Now, let's move on to another big reason why people forget English words when they speak: fear and nervousness. Julia, have you noticed that sometimes learners know the words perfectly when they're alone, but the moment they start talking to someone, they suddenly forget everything?
Oh, yes, it happens all the time. A student can practice at home and speak quite well, but when a teacher asks a question or when they meet an English speaker, they become nervous. Their heart starts beating faster. They begin worrying about making mistakes. And suddenly even simple words disappear from their minds.
That's because fear puts pressure on the brain. Instead of focusing on communication, the brain starts thinking, what if I say something wrong? What if people laugh at me? What if my grammar isn't perfect? These thoughts create stress, and stress makes it harder to remember vocabulary.
Exactly. Many learners are not forgetting words because they don't know them. They're forgetting words because they're too worried about being perfect. They put so much pressure on themselves that their minds become blank.
Let me give an example. Imagine someone asks you, what did you do yesterday? You know the answer, and you know the words, but because you're nervous, you suddenly can't remember how to say even a simple sentence like, I visited my friend, or I stayed at home.
That's why confidence is so important. When you relax and accept that making mistakes is a normal part of learning, your brain works much better. You remember more words, you speak more naturally, and you enjoy the conversation instead of being afraid of it.
And here's something every listener should remember. Nobody speaks perfect English all the time. Even advanced speakers and native speakers sometimes forget words, make mistakes, or need a moment to think.
So, dear listeners, don't let fear stop you from speaking. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to forget a word sometimes. Every time you speak English, you're training your brain and becoming a better speaker.
That's right. Confidence doesn't come before practice. It comes because of practice. The more you speak, the less nervous you'll become, and the easier it will be to remember the words you already know. Now that we've talked about some of the reasons why people forget English words, let's focus on the good news. There are simple and effective ways to remember vocabulary more easily. Julia, I think this is the part many of our listeners have been waiting for.
Absolutely, Jason. The first thing learners should do is stop learning words by themselves and start learning them in sentences. When you learn a word inside a sentence, you understand how it is actually used in real communication. For example, instead of only learning the word improve, learn a sentence like, I want to improve my English speaking skills. This helps your brain connect the word with a real situation.
That's a fantastic tip. Here's another one. Use new words as soon as possible. Many learners study vocabulary today and then never use it again. If you learn a new word, try to speak it, write it, or include it in a conversation on the same day. The faster you use it, the stronger it stays in your memory.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to repeat words many times. Some learners think they should remember a word after seeing it once or twice, but that's not realistic. Repetition is one of the most powerful learning tools. The more often you see, hear, read, and speak a word, the easier it becomes to remember.
Another great strategy is to connect new words to your daily life. If you learn the word breakfast, think about your breakfast tomorrow morning. If you learn the word exercise, think about your own exercise routine. When a word becomes part of your real life, your brain remembers it much more easily.
I also recommend keeping a small vocabulary notebook. Every time you learn a useful word or phrase, write it down along with an example sentence. Then spend a few minutes reviewing those words every day. This simple habit can make a huge difference over time.
And here's one of my favorite methods. Talk to yourself in English. It might sound a little funny, but it's incredibly effective. Describe what you're doing, what you're thinking, or what your plans are for the day. This forces your brain to actively use vocabulary instead of passively recognizing it.
That's such a powerful exercise. Remember, learning vocabulary is not about collecting thousands of words. It's about turning words into tools that you can actually use when you speak. The more you interact with a word, the more likely you are to remember it.
So, dear listeners, if you want to remember English words more easily, learn them in sentences, use them immediately, review them regularly, connect them to your life, and practice speaking every day. These simple habits can dramatically improve your vocabulary and your confidence.
Exactly. Small daily actions may not seem important at first, but over weeks and months they can completely transform the way you remember and use English words.
Now, let's talk about something that happens to every English learner. You're in the middle of a conversation, you're speaking confidently, and then suddenly you forget a word. What should you do in that moment?
First of all, don't panic. This is probably the most important advice we can give. Many learners stop speaking completely and think, "Oh no, I forgot the word. My English is terrible." But that's not true at all.
Exactly. Forgetting one word doesn't mean you can't communicate. In fact, good communicators know how to keep talking even when they don't remember the perfect word.
For example, if you forget the word umbrella, don't stop the conversation. You can say, It's the thing you use when it's raining. The other person will probably understand immediately.
That's a great strategy. Instead of focusing on the missing word, focus on the message you want to communicate. Use simpler words that you already know. Remember, communication is more important than perfection.
Another useful tip is to pause for a second and take your time. Sometimes the word comes back to your mind after a few moments. There's nothing wrong with saying, "Let me think for a second," or "I can't remember the exact word."
And here's something many learners don't realize. Native speakers do this too. Even they sometimes forget words and describe things in different ways. So, don't feel embarrassed if it happens to you.
Also, never apologize too much for forgetting a word. Some learners say, sorry, my English is bad," every few seconds. Instead, smile, stay relaxed, and continue speaking.
That's right. Every time you keep speaking despite forgetting a word, you're building confidence and training your brain to communicate more naturally.
So, dear listeners, the next time you forget an English word, don't stop, don't panic, and don't lose confidence. Use easier words, describe the idea, take a short pause if necessary, and keep the conversation going.
Because the goal of speaking English isn't to know every single word. The goal is to express your ideas and connect with people. And you can do that even if you occasionally forget a word. Now let's finish with something practical. We've talked about why we forget words and what to do when it happens. But how can we train our brains to remember vocabulary better every day? The answer is simple. Small, daily exercises.
That's right, Jason. You don't need to study for 5 or 6 hours a day. In fact, just 10 or 15 minutes of focused practice every day can make a huge difference. The key is consistency, not perfection.
Here's the first exercise. Talk to yourself in English for 5 minutes every day. Describe what you're doing, what you're wearing, or what your plans are. For example, you can say, "I'm drinking a cup of tea," or "I'm going to study English tonight." This simple habit forces your brain to use vocabulary actively.
I love that exercise. Here's another one. Learn just 5 useful words each day and make at least 3 sentences with each word. Don't simply memorize the meanings. Use the words in real examples that are connected to your life. That's how vocabulary moves from your notebook into your memory.
Exercise number 3 is listening and repeating. Listen to an English podcast, a short video, or a conversation, and repeat the sentences aloud. When you hear and say words again and again, your brain starts recognizing them more quickly during conversations.
And here's a powerful habit that many successful learners use. Review old vocabulary every day. Spend a few minutes looking at words you learned last week or last month. Remember, repetition is the secret to long-term memory.
Another excellent exercise is to think in English instead of translating everything into your native language. Ask yourself simple questions like, "What am I doing right now?" or "What will I do tomorrow?" Then answer them in English. This helps your brain create direct connections with English words.
Exactly. These exercises may sound simple, but if you practice them every day, you'll slowly notice something amazing. You'll begin remembering more words, speaking more naturally, and feeling much more confident.
So, dear listeners, don't wait for your vocabulary to improve by itself. Train your brain a little every day. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. It all adds up.
Because in language learning, small daily habits create big results. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and little by little, those forgotten words will start staying in your memory much longer.
As we come to the end of today's episode, I want to leave you with one very important message. Please don't be discouraged if you forget English words. Forgetting vocabulary is not a sign of failure. It's simply a normal part of the learning process. Every English learner, from beginners to advanced speakers, has experienced this problem.
That's absolutely true, Jason. In fact, even people who speak English very well sometimes forget words or need a few seconds to remember the right expression. The difference is that they don't give up. They keep speaking, keep practicing, and keep learning.
So, if you forget a word tomorrow, don't say, "I can't speak English." Instead, say, "I'm still learning, and every conversation is making me better." Remember, fluency doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from using English again and again, even when you make mistakes.
Exactly. Be patient with yourself and celebrate every small improvement. Every new word you learn, every sentence you speak, and every moment you practice is one more step toward becoming a confident English speaker.
Keep believing in yourself. Keep showing up every day, and never be afraid to speak. Your English doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to keep improving. And if you continue practicing, the words that you forget today will become the words you use confidently tomorrow.
And that's all for today's episode of the English Learning Podcast. We truly hope this conversation has helped you understand why you forget English words and, more importantly, how you can start remembering them more easily.
Remember, don't be afraid of forgetting words. Every time you speak English, you're improving, learning, and becoming more confident. Keep practicing a little every day, and you'll be surprised by how much progress you can make.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another English lesson with us.
And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us, what's the English word that you always forget when speaking? Your answer might help other learners around the world.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Take care, keep learning, keep speaking, and we'll see you in the next episode of the English Learning Podcast.